start with the numbers. The numbers, all right, because the honeymoon is over. I like looking at polls to get a gauge on what is happening around us. Now, I know a lot of you don't like polls or don't believe the polls or flat out don't trust the polls, and I understand that. But they can be helpful to build an idea of what direction the country is going. And because COVID is not here to power unlimited numbers of mass mail-in ballots this time around, it seems to me that we should take a closer look at the numbers. So hang with me, because we have all been being told that Kamala Harris is surging in the polls. Momentum and enthusiasm. And people like Nate Silver began predicting that Harris was on her path to victory. Over the Drudge Report, they're putting out headlines every day about how the Trump campaign is in panic mode and his campaign is collapsing. And I think a few of you took that to heart. I'm here to say stop. Take a breath. It's going to be okay. And the other place that has people going, oh, boy, that's bad for Trump, are the people looking at the betting odds. Well, right now, places like Polymarket give Kamala a 9-point advantage in the betting odds. But you probably don't remember that Hillary Clinton held a huge advantage in 2016. The betting market said her chance of winning was almost 85%. As I recall, we didn't have a President Hillary Clinton, but you might want to remind me. So anyhow, relax. Let's turn to a guy who I think gives indigestion to Democrats while giving sanity to the rest of us, at least sometimes. I mean, they can do bong rips at Rolling Stone and Mother Jones and declare Kamala Harris the greatest candidate since Abe Lincoln. But as they say, they could be out over their skis on this one. Harry Enton is a fairly new face over at CNN. He's a young guy. A guy who seems pretty good at breaking down the numbers for the most part. And before Kamala starts measuring for curtains, she may want to relax and have a drink. Maybe a bong rip herself. And listen closely. Here it is.
I want to take a step back and sort of point out we've kind of been here before. So August 13th, how far were the polls off in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin? And this is in 2016 and 2020. Trump was estimated both times around and by significant margins. Take a look here. In 2016, the average poll in those states that I mentioned, those Great Lake battleground states, Trump was underestimated by 9 points on average at this point in 2016. How about 2020? It wasn't a one-off. Look at this. He was underestimated by 5 points on average. And, of course, Kamala Harris's advantage in those New York Times Siena College polls were 4 points in each of these key battleground states, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. The bottom line is this. If you have any idea, if you're a Kamala Harris fan and you want to rip open the champagne bottle, pop that cork, do not do it. Donald Trump is very much in this race. If we have a polling shift like we've seen in prior years from now until the final result, Donald Trump would actually win. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I am saying that he is very much in this ballgame based upon where he is right now and compare that to where he was in prior years.
Actually, he's winning. He's winning today. If you go to the polls that are trustworthy, I'll tell you more about that in a moment. You see, as I've told you over and over again, Donald Trump always outperforms the polls. There's no reason to believe that's not going to happen again this year, because it will. In fact, I suggest that if the former president can stick to what is hurting Americans right now, the economy, inflation, the cost of living, having to work more than one job to feed the family, and of course, the wide open southern border, that he will continue on to a second term if he stays on those points. And you know what? President Trump has been doing exactly that in recent days, and the polls are reflecting it. Let's run down some very recent numbers, the ones that were polled right after Biden dropped out, all right? Here's one from RMG Research, that's Scott Rasmussen's polling firm. It has Trump up 2 in the general election. These are all polls from the last day or two. If that holds true, Trump will win easily in the Electoral College in a runaway. How about younger Americans? RMG Research did that too. Here's the result of those 18 to 34-year-olds. Trump has a 3-point lead there, 49-46, with Kennedy in the race at 3 points. That's a massive shift for a Republican in modern times, yet you don't really see the media crowing about that one now, do you? You know why? They're frightened. And how about this? From the Washington Post, of all places. Yes, look at the map. President Trump in the Washington Post map shows him winning 5 of the 7 swing states and easily within the margin of error in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, too. Could be a clean sweep. And CNN's Enton showed another shocking poll, and this one is shocking. Because if you listen to all the babbling talking heads on MSNBC, ABC, and yes, it's CNN Chicken Noodle News, you would think that Kamala Harris is doing a tour as popular as Taylor Swift, and that young and old, black and white, rich and poor are all flocking to her. But buzzkill Democrats, the numbers are not bearing that out. In fact, if there is a red flag for Democrats ready to pop the champagne, this is going to help them put the cork back in the bottle, just like they did that night back in November of 2016. Remember that? Watch this.
Yesterday, I was mentioning, the enthusiasm for the Democratic ticket was up. Yep. But that enthusiasm is not the same thing as going out to actually vote. And there's a different question, which essentially says, how certain are you actually going to go out and vote? And this is the top range, almost certain to vote. Again, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. This is among registered voters. Look at this. Look at Kamala Harris now compared to where Joe Biden was back in May. In fact, 62% of Joe Biden voters said they were almost certain to turn out and vote. Now,
it's gone down.
It's actually gone down a little bit. I would call this in the same general area at 61%. But it's basically unchanged. And look at Donald Trump. He was at 58% in May. He's actually gone up a little bit now. He's at 60% now. Again, basically no real change. So the bottom line here is, yes, there may be more enthusiasm for Kamala Harris, but the fact is we're not seeing that necessarily translate in the almost certain vote.
Oh, it's meaningless, in fact, Harry. Thank you. Oh, and sorry about that, lefties. Did you just choke on your oatmeal? Maybe. Now, let me share one more juicy little morsel from the CNN breakdown that will leave Democrats breaking down when they hear this one. This guy they have spent so much time and energy hating on since the summer 2015 has actually been building in popularity, especially since he left office. And headed into the last 80 days is in a better position in the category of who's more popular than he's ever been before. Listen.
And one little other note, Sarah, I will note this. Donald Trump is more popular today than he was on August 13th in either 2020 or 2016. So the bottom line is, yes, Kamala Harris is doing better in the polls, but there's a long way to go. The polls can shift. The almost certain to vote hasn't actually shifted, and Donald Trump is more popular than he was at either 2016 or 2020 at this point.
I look at that. I almost feel sorry for that woman standing there listening to Harry lay out the cold, hard facts. And just so we're perfectly clear, here are the facts as of today. Number one, Trump was farther behind in the last two elections and outperformed the polls. And if the election were held today, he wins. Number two, Democrats are no more likely to vote for Kamala Harris today than they were for Joe Biden back in May. And number three, Donald Trump is more popular today than he was at the same time in 2016 and 2020. These are important facts. Plus, the polling numbers continue to get better for Trump over the last several days. I wouldn't be taking a victory lap in Chicago, not through those crowds of protesters. If I were the Trump campaign that is currently dropping millions of dollars in key states like Michigan, I just talked to one station executive in one media market here where I live in Michigan. He told me this. The Trump campaign just dropped $1 million just for August. It's a local station. And the MAGA super PAC also dropped $1 million. And again, that's just one station in August in Lansing, Michigan. So if you think the Trump campaign isn't in the game and hitting key markets, well, you would be surprised because they're making big media buys in Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and it's not going to stop. In fact, I started turning on my computer here in the last 48 hours. All I'm getting bombarded with are Trump ads on my computer, pop-ups, Not Kamala Harris messages, Donald Trump messages. And because messages like these are kind of messages that believe will move the narrow band of undecided voters off center and into their camp in November, you'll see these continue. Listen.
This is the final battle. With you at my side, we will demolish the deep state. We will expel the warmongers from our government. We will drive out the globalists. We will cast out the communists, Marxists, and fascists. We will throw off the sick political class that hates our country. We will rout the fake news media, and we will liberate America from these villains once and for all.
Yeah, those messages will continue. And there are some other things that have become a drag on the Harris campaign as well. Things like her own words, for example. This is why you don't see her sitting down with anyone. What are we, 25, 26 days into this thing? Almost a month. Even friendly media outlets, she won't sit down with because they know she will self-destruct. She can't do it. I agree with Donald Trump when he says Kamala is not up to the job. Not up to the job at all. Here's what he says.
I am Kamala Harris. My pronouns are she and her.
You're considered the most liberal United States senator. Well, actually, the nonpartisan GovTrack has rated you as the most liberal senator.
Do you have any plans to visit the border?
We are going to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe.
I am in favor of saying that we're not going to treat people who are undocumented cross borders criminals. That's correct. That is correct.
A lot of the signs at the rally you just held were people standing there saying, abolish ICE.
Yeah.
Is that a position that you agree with?
We need to probably think about starting from scratch.
So you support giving universal health care, Medicare for all to people who are in this country illegally?
I am opposed to any policy that would deny in our country any human being public health, period.
Yeah, the honeymoon is over. The shine is off that pumpkin. Oh, and one final point, speaking of her radical San Francisco policies, a poll was just done on how Americans feel about California. The question was, do you believe the United States as a whole would be better off or worse off if its policies were more like California? 28%, 1 in 4 said better off. More than half, 52%, said worse off. That's 2 to 1. That doesn't bode well for Kamala either. And while all of this is going on, we still do not know who our president is. Jake Sullivan is my guess at the moment, or the closest thing to it. At any rate, we'll have a new president come January, if we can hold on that long.